Hey folks, Russ Bailey here. It's time for another BrushPile Fishing, the video podcast. As always, we've got a great guest in store, a friend of mine for many years. Rick Solomon is going to join us. We're going to talk about tournament fishing nowadays, the big changes he's seen, and we're going to recap a little bit about his past also and the success he's had. So you stay tuned. We'll be back with BrushPile Fishing, the podcast. All right, folks, welcome back. And with me now is my good old buddy, Rick Solomon. Rick, how we doing?
Doing fantastic, Russ. I'm glad to be here.
Folks, we're not dressing like twins or anything. We're actually coming to you from Holmes Bend Marina here in Kentucky, Green River Lake. We're doing a fall media camp, and I'll tell you what, the weather has been beautiful. We got a group picture today, so we're all wearing these shirts, but the weather's been beautiful, catching a lot of fish. And typical Green River fish, a lot of 10, 11-inch crappie, but it's been a great time. But Rick, me and you at the camp, we haven't got to fish together, but I think we're going to try that this afternoon.
Yes, sir. We're going to give it a shot. Been catching a lot of fish. Like you said, they've been small, but we've been catching a lot. It's been fun. It's been fun.
Rick, for the folks at home, a lot of guys that like yourself that used to fish tournament trails have kind of backed off a little bit. But tell the folks, you have had how many national points champions did you and Mike win?
I think we've won 5 or 6 national points champions. It always came down to Ronnie Cass and Steve Coleman and Mike and I.
Yep.
It pretty much every year after year after year. But, we put the time in. We competed against each other on the same lakes, and they won a lot. We won a lot. It was a great time.
One of the most, and it was cool because we were there, but one of the most memorable tournaments for you had to be Grenada at the time where you guys set the record. Tell the folks a little bit about that.
Well, it was kind of interesting when we were pre-fishing. We were catching some 1.5, 2 pound fish. And then we went up the Yellowbusha River, and we found just a little ditch. The first fish Mike caught was over 3 pounds. And Mike said, "Put your poles up." I said, "Okay." So we put our poles up. He goes, "We're starting right here." And the next day, it was unbelievable. The amount of fish we caught that were 2.5 to 3 1/4. And our biggest fish was a 3 1/4, and unfortunately, it died on us. So I had to weigh in a minnow, 2.78.
Yeah, one of the small ones.
A small one, 2.78, and we ended up with 20.46. And that's the first time the 20-pound barrier's ever been broken.
Yes.
And that was we held that for about 10 years.
Yep.
And then LifeScope came along.
Well, before we get to that,
yes.
So you guys were you were a lot like Ronnie and Steve. Spider rigging was your thing.
That was our thing. 4 foot deep with 16-foot rods. Now, when a 3-pound fish hits a 16-foot rod, only 4 foot of line out, dude, it's like a fire drill. You're basically just hand over hand with a 16-foot B&M trolling rod, and just hoping that you are able to keep that fish on until somebody gets it netted.
So it's a little nerve-wracking too.
Oh, it was extremely nerve-wracking. And, the big sigh of relief when you finally get it in the net. And Mike would be putting one back in the live well, and all of a sudden another pole goes, and grab the net. And he was good net man.
I'll tell you, yeah, we won't go there.
Okay.
Mike, I'm not touching that one. So, but back in the day, and as a guy, when I got done with tournament fishing and I started doing the TV show, we started doing shows on the classics.
That's correct.
The one thing I will say that I miss is when we used to do a show on the classic, we would tape in a day several different patterns. You would have guys like yourself, spider rigging. We'd find guys dock shooting, long lining. We just found so many techniques. And then when you put the show together, it was really cool because you had all of them.
Right.
Nowadays, it is absolutely completely changed.
It's completely changed. Back in the 80s when we first started fishing tournaments, we had the little pixels, the small screen, and thing.
Rick, I started with a paper graph.
Wow.
Walleye fishing. I had a paper graph.
I figured you had a chisel and a hammer and was back in the day.
Keep it up, Rick.
Okay. Anyway, then the big next innovation was the GPS.
Mm-hmm.
We got a Garmin GPS, and we were able to mark brush piles that we happened to find
and
save them prior to fishing the tournament. And the next day, we were just hoping that the military didn't scramble the signal and screw us up where instead of being within 3 foot, we're within 50 foot. So we got to hunt around to try to find that brush pile. But that was one of the best innovations that ever came about. And then shortly, a couple of years later, the side imaging comes about. Mm-hmm. And that was a game changer. I know Mike and a lot of the fishermen didn't want to do it at first, but once we got in tune with how it could change the game, how we could find brush piles off to the side versus just happen to fish and find them, it changed the game and made us better fishermen. And now Garmin's got this live scope. It's just unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Let me ask you this because I've told this several people, but you've been in the industry probably longer than I have, and I've been in it a long time.
Yes, sir.
We've seen several things come, and make
come
a difference. Have you ever seen anything change the industry like this has?
No. Everything I thought I knew about fishing crappie, it changed everything. It changed my mind. I'm thinking, okay, I've studied seasonal patterns. You don't know how much time preparing for a tournament, studying maps. We used to get maps and sit down and study. Okay, it's this time of year.
Here's a bend, and
here's bends. The fish should be right here in about 15 foot of water, and we would go check. We'd have to fish to find fish, and now you go out there and with the Garmin live scope, all you're doing is looking. You don't have to drop a line in the water. Oh, look at the fish on that one. That's a good fish right there.
And that's it. You know the size.
And you know the size, and you don't have to go catch it. When we started, you had to catch fish to find out what size that you think you're going to come up with the next day. If you're catching fish that are 10 inches, we need to go find something bigger. And eventually we find some fish that I think 14-inch fish, we'll give those a shot for tomorrow. But it's been a game changer.
Well, and one of the things that we've seen is it has now become, not all, but if you look at some of the tournaments, it's a young man's. For the young guy that plays video and fishes.
Yeah, that's the big thing. It's more of a game to them.
Mm-hmm.
And
they're pretty darn good.
They're very good at it. My grandson, I got him in the boat with me, and he knew more about that fish finder than I did. And he only played with it for about 2 seconds, it seemed like. I mean, he just hit a few buttons. He goes, here we go, Grandpa. He's catching fish. I thought, oh, boy.
We've got, of course, a young guy on our pro staff, Dominic Dujic, and he just won our veterans tournament. And
yes,
he is a young, 22-year-old kid, and he is absolutely phenomenal. Beat some very good teams in that tournament, and he's won several tournaments this year. Yeah. Josh Jones, another young guy, but it's, there's a few of us old timers that are good at it. Tony Hughes.
Yeah. Tony Hughes.
And yes, you're an old timer. You're in our class, Tony, but Tony's done pretty well with it.
Whitey Outlaw.
Whitey.
But his son knows it a little bit better.
Matt's the man.
Matt's the man right there. Because they won the Santee Cooper tournament, and that's what they were doing, live scoping.
Yep.
And Matt was telling me all about it at ICAST and how he did it. And it's pretty interesting.
The one thing I'll say, and because you got guys that absolutely love it, you got guys that think shouldn't be in tournaments. But I remember the same thing with guys spider rigging. You know, guys said, man, that's not right. You should only have one rod in the hand. And I was a single pole fisherman.
Oh, I know you were.
But guys learn to adapt, you
Yes,
know,
sir.
and if you want to compete in today's trails, you have to do this. You have to do it.
Back in the when we were very successful, we would do whatever it takes to put fish in a boat. Like we won a Smithland pool vertical jigging with one pole.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the way you had to catch those fish. You couldn't spider rig. St. Mary's, most of the tournaments were won with a little cork and 6 inches of line.
So you're saying you were versatile.
Very versatile. You had to be
stops at a point.
Right. I fell in love with spider rigging and learning how to spider rig in shallow water. That's something that Mike and I perfected, and it took a lot of fishermen to figure that out because we introduced them to St. Mary's, and there people looking at us like, "What are you doing?" And so
they still look at you like that.
Right? Well,
I'm just saying,
but it's a changed ball game now. It really has. Garmin has really stepped it up.
It's been amazing.
It has been. But B&M, they got the poles to do it with.
They got everything.
They got everything, man. I've been with B&M since, I think, 91.
Yeah.
So I love B&M. I love Garmin. It's crappie magnet now. Oh, man, those thin spins.
But let me, before we end this, folks, I want to tell one little story.
Oh, no.
Because Rick talks about, being versatile. And I said, to a point. So Rick comes up to St. Mary's one day and he says, hey, he said, let's go out and shoot some pontoons, shoot some docks. I said, all right. So
that wasn't St. Mary's.
Buckeye?
Nope.
Where?
Neely Henry.
Okay. It was Neely. So I take Rick out. And folks, it's the first time and the only time I've ever seen this happen. But I'm showing Rick how to shoot, and Rick pulls back. He shoots that way. The jig, the line, everything ends up 20 foot behind you or further?
Probably further.
Never seen it happen. I don't know what he did.
The line stuck on my finger, and so it did a pendulum, and before it finally released, went backward.
So his versatility stopped at dock shooting. But no, but Rick, I tell you.
We did a couple dock shooting shows together.
We have.
And it turned out very well, except for one time. We shot on one side dock. We caught a lot of good fish.
This was down the Dora Canal.
In Florida, at the Harris Channel Lakes. We went on the other side of the dock, and Russ said, there's no fish here. I said, how do you know until we shoot it? He goes, I promise you there's no fish here. And he kept on going. I said, but there's no fish there. And you look over, and there's a snake laying on one of the cross members. And I'm afraid of snakes.
Folks, if you've seen my show, you know I do not like snakes. And this one, I would have kept fishing that because we were nailing fish. But this was at least a 25, 30-foot python up on that dock. So I was thinking of Rick's safety. Rick, so I don't like snakes. And we did. We moved.
We moved. And we got a good show out of it.
Tell you what, we've had some fun over the years.
Oh, man. We have a blast when we're together.
I'll tell you what, I appreciate you joining us. We need to do another Florida show together.
Absolutely.
You haven't been on BrushPile fishing yet, so.
Yeah, we did several on Midwest
Crappie.
We go down and shoot some docks down on, what's that, Lake North?
Weiss?
No, Florida.
Lake.
We did shoot some docks up here, but caught some good fish.
Well, anyways, it's time for me and him to get back out on the water now.
Yes,
again, Holmes Bend Marina, folks. If you're looking for a place to stay, it's awesome down here. Cabins are phenomenal. But we're going back out. We're going to hit the water. But before we close this out, let me remind you, if you don't have the BrushPile app for your phone, make sure you get that. It's completely free, folks. We harp on that because it's free and it's a tool you're going to use.
Free?
It's free no matter what kind of phone.
Okay.
It's got guide information. You can hook up with the guide directly through the app if you like them on our show and you want to fish with them. It's got, my favorite feature is the log. Like I say, I used to do everything on paper. Everything is right there on your phone. Sir. It's got the date. It's got everything. So check out the BrushPile app. And folks, I hope you enjoyed the podcast. We'll be back again. So this is Russ Bailey. We're out of here.